The room was buzzing, cameras flashing, and reporters scribbling notes furiously. It was one of those political events that wasn't meant to be remembered, but quickly turned into the kind of spectacle that dominates headlines for weeks. On stage, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz was addressing a packed hall, his tone growing sharper, his rhetoric more cutting as he turned his fire toward former President Donald Trump and his allies. At first, Walz stuck to his usual lines about policy, painting Republicans as out of touch. But then his words shifted, his voice hardening as he pointed toward Karoline Leavitt, the young, rising star who had quickly become one of Trump's fiercest defenders. The audience gasped as Walz leaned into the microphone and delivered a personal insult so vicious it sucked the air out of the room. "She's nothing more than Trump's youngest pawn," he sneered, the word dripping with disdain. The insult wasn't just about politics, it was meant to humiliate, to reduce Leavitt's rise to nothing but blind loyalty. Murmurs rippled across the hall. Some gasped, others chuckled uncomfortably. The cameras caught Karoline's face harden, but she remained still, dignified, refusing to give Walz the reaction he wanted. But before anyone else could speak, Donald Trump, sitting just a few seats away, leaned forward. His expression was calm, but his eyes burned with the kind of fire his supporters recognized immediately. The room went silent as Trump slowly rose, towering above the stage, and grabbed the microphone. "Tim," he began, his voice low but steady, "I've heard a lot of cheap shots in politics. I've had people attack me, my family, and my supporters. But what you just did, what you just said to a young woman who has worked harder than you'll ever understand, wasn't strength. It was weakness." The crowd shifted, their attention locked on Trump. He continued, his tone growing sharper. "Karoline Leavitt didn't grow up with power handed to her. She didn't inherit her platform. She fought for it. She worked for it. And she earned the respect of millions of Americans who see in her what you'll never have: courage, conviction, and loyalty to something bigger than herself." Walz shifted uncomfortably, but Trump wasn't finished. He raised his hand, pointing directly at him. "You call her a pawn? No, Tim, you're the pawn. A pawn of a broken system. A pawn of the establishment that mocks young people who dare to rise. And let me tell you something. History doesn't remember the men who threw insults. It remembers the men and women who stood up when the world tried to silence them." The audience erupted in thunderous applause. Some leapt to their feet, clapping and cheering. Even those who didn't support Trump couldn't deny the raw energy in the room. Walz, red-faced, tried to laugh it off, but the cameras had already captured the moment. A governor reduced to silence while Trump turned his insult into a rallying cry. Karoline, sitting quietly through it all, finally stood. She didn't need to say much. Her poise alone was enough. She smiled slightly, nodding toward Trump, then toward the crowd. It was the image of resilience, a young leader refusing to be torn down by cruelty. Within hours, the clips went viral. Headlines exploded. Trump defends Karoline Leavitt after Walz's insult, and Trump turns Walz's attack into stunning reversal. Social media was flooded with praise for Leavitt's composure and Trump's fierce defense. Even critics admitted Walz had gone too far. But beyond the headlines, the deeper story resonated. Millions of young women and men across the country saw in Karoline a reflection of themselves mocked, underestimated, dismissed. And they saw in her calm, and in Trump's defense, a powerful reminder. Dignity is the greatest answer to disrespect, and courage is the sharpest weapon against cruelty. By the end of the week, the insult Walz had thrown was no longer remembered. What endured was the image of Karoline Leavitt rising above it, and the moment Donald Trump made her attacker regret ever underestimating her.